Extraction of egg cells is the first step to in vitro fertilization. This technique has solved the fertility problem for many women and helped them to have babies of their own and be mothers. Unfortunately, not for all of them. Sometimes the solution has to come from eggs donated by other women. Donating egg cells is a notion that will appeal to many women, even without the option of being paid for their eggs. But the practice raises complex questions that potential donors may not be aware of, and that need to be answered. To start with, let's see a quick overview of the medical aspects of egg extraction. During the natural menstrual cycle, 1 egg cell per month is produced. An egg cell could be harvested after a natural ovulation cycle. IVF techniques stimulate the production of multiple eggs in order to raise the possibilities of successful fertilization. The first step consists of suppressing spontaneous ovulation, usually by injecting a gonadotropin-releasing hormone agonist. Ovarian stimulation itself is generally induced with injectable gonadotropins. This process is strictly monitored. Typically, 10 days of injection will be necessary. When the ovarian follicles have sufficiently developed, ovulation is induced. The eggs are retrieved using an ultrasound-guided needle that pierces the vaginal wall in order to reach the ovaries. The follicles are aspirated through this needle. Obviously, for the donor, her hormone concentrations will be much higher during this process than during her natural cycle. Women who consider donation should be aware that this procedure may involve side effects and possible health problems. The treatment may cause ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, where fluid accumulates in the abdomen, where the ovaries enlarge, resulting among other symptoms in abdominal pain and vomiting. In its most severe form, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome can be life-threatening. The hormonal changes may cause weight gain, hot flashes and mood swings. Long-term risks include uterine polyps, bleeding, anemia, early menopause and possibly cancer. There is a risk of unwanted pregnancy after sexual intercourse during the process of hormonal stimulation. And of course, there are the usual risks of a medical intervention and general anesthesia. The procedure of egg donation involves numerous inconveniences for the donor, and they include about 10 clinical visits to the gynecologist and psychologist, at least 6 blood samples, at least 6 intravaginal ultrasound exams. On average, 60 hours will be spent at the clinic. Puncture for egg extraction under conscious sedation or general anesthesia. And the donor has to remain available at any moment for a period of 2 or 3 months. After extraction, the egg is fertilized in vitro. After 5 to 7 days, it reaches its blastocyst stage, is then called embryo and can be implanted in the uterus of either a demanding woman in case of infertility treatment or a surrogate mother in case of gestational surrogacy. There's also another possible use of egg cells. Until now, they remain the best source of stem cells. The use of blastocyst in stem cell research has opened new possibilities in the search for treatment for life-threatening diseases. And there's more. Egg cells could provide a solution for organ shortage through therapeutic cloning. This procedure results in a zygote with all of the characteristics of the recipient that can be grown into organs that will not be rejected by the recipient. We all look forward to the advances in research and new technologies that science may bring us. But is it acceptable that we put people at risk in order to help others? Legislation in different countries is far from uniform. Some countries have no regulations whatsoever. In some, egg donation is illegal, while in others it is permitted under law. While government may allow for the extraction of egg cells, they also impose conditions. The first condition is that agreement to donation must be free, informed and presented in written form. According to cultural values, lawmakers may also add other conditions, which for example can be related to the anonymity of the donor, her age, whether she already has children of her own, the number of embryos that can be produced from her eggs, or the number of donations she can make. Sometimes consent from the donor's husband is required. Very few countries allow women to sell their eggs, but most require a financial compensation to cover medical expenses, transportation or absence from work. This compensation varies. In Spain, for example, it is €1,000, while in the Czech Republic it is €400. The inconsistency in legislation has numerous consequences. Fertility tourism, from countries with strict regulations to countries with more liberal laws. Low-cost tourism to countries where egg cells are cheaper to obtain. Uncontrolled practices in countries with little or no regulation. Merchandising of the female body, and the exploitation of economically disadvantaged women. Everywhere the law imposes a well-informed choice, but how well are people informed? Private clinics' websites are not always a reliable source of facts. Their information is often based on psychological manipulation, and they play on the potential donor's maternal instinct. Images are always pastel blue or pink and depict happy couples and babies. They do not provide adequate or concrete information about embryo stem cells and research. Donors are often recruited amongst youth via the internet and in places where young people gather. How can young girls, inexperienced and in need of money, be expected to resist marketing techniques, especially when financial compensation often exceeds a monthly salary? Not always, but very often, donated egg cells arrive on a supply and demand market. Egg cells are bought and sold to cut down costs or to avoid legal difficulties. This market is often delocalized, but one thing stays the same: its basic commodity is the female egg cell. Donors often come from poor countries with troubled economies, whereas the demand for egg cells comes from rich countries. There is an urgent need for an open ethical, political, medical and public debate. The subject of this debate is not a personal story of life-giving and being a mother. It is about the exploitation of women, their bodies and their vulnerability. We are all responsible for a solution. What we want: clear information concerning the use of egg cells in reproductive medicine and stem cell research. Transparent information for women concerning the impact of egg cell extraction and possible abuses. National and international legislation to protect women's health and rights. Exposing the facts is not enough. We need to act. We want to raise awareness about the risks and consequences of egg retrieval. Our project is to make a film aimed at a wide audience. The information would be broadcast in multiple languages and disseminated via different social networks.